So here I am, finally revealing 28 years later, The Bone Temple by Nia DaCosta. It's a direct sequel to the previous 28 blank later franchise, 28 years later. So this movie was filmed back to back with the previous one, but like I said, this time it's directed by Nia DaCosta. Danny Boyle directed the previous one, and this one is, like I said, pretty much a direct continuation of the previous one where it left off with Spike, played by Alfie Williams, who he wanted to be like a man now, and decided to explore the island by himself, and ended up with with the head Jimmy, played by Jack O'Connell, who, like I said, made a a very brief appearance at the end of the last movie. And so, as we saw in the end of the last movie, there a bunch of people wearing blonde wigs. The head Jimmy, he's natural blonde and everything. They wear power suits, track suits, all colorful, and he wears an upside down cross, referencing events from the beginning of the last one. And at the same time, we're also following Dr. Kelson, played by Ralph. Is it Ray? Ralph Fiennes, Lord Voldemort from some people. The kind, but a very eccentric doctor from the previous movie, as said. He's very much sticking to his Hippocratic oath, do no harm, so much that he doesn't even want to harm the infected on the island. His way of dealing with them was pretty much sedating them. And like I said, dealing with the events in the last movie, he ended up sedating Samson, who was like the head alpha. Samson's the name he gave him. Like, we don't know this name. All I know is like the alphas they're very large, very scary, and even more scary than the regular infected. And he ended up shooting Samson with some of his morphine darts. And this movie picks up like maybe like right after, and we see now that Samson has a bit of a how you say it, has a fix for the morphine that Dr. Kelson gives him. So he comes around every so often, tries to intimidate him to give him more drugs. But Kelson kind of realizes, like, okay, this is what this alpha actually wants. And so I was like, maybe I can work with him that way to see if I can figure out something how to treat these people, how to treat the infected as much as I can with the very limited resources. So, like I said, there's two plots going on. There's the Kelson and Samson story, and then there's a Spike with the Jimmies. And eventually, of course, they will coincide as shown in the previews and everything. I'm not giving spoilers just right now, but yeah. So, like I said, doing those two plots. The Kelson storyline is very Kelson and Sam's story is very sweet, but also kind of very sad at the same time, because we see that Kelson is just a very lonely man, as you expect. He's very isolated because, like, if he's not dealing with infected who are just trying to kill him, he's probably got to deal with like humans who come around who also probably want to do harm. And you can kind of explain away like infected being harmful, since they don't have control of like themselves for the most part. But humans, that's another side. So he's very lonely, and once he sees that Sam's is coming around look for a fix, he's like, hey, I can like make a friend right now. I can hang out with this big behemoth. He won't hurt me as long as I give him his fix. And like I said, Ray Fiennes, I don't think this should not go unstated. Of course, like, he's a very well received actor. I think he's been nominated for many, like, pretty much every acting award you probably could be nominated for. First time I ever saw him was Schindler's List, unfortunately, if you know what the role he played in that movie was. But of course, like, so he brings it's always nice when he always gets typecast a little bit as villains or just very intense dude. And he still gets that kind of intensity here. But he has played enough like nice men in his career that, like, it just is refreshing to see. And like I said, this is no exception. He's just a very kind man who's just lonely. He just wants a friend. We don't get to see too much of his backstory, anything like that. We see a little hints, like how he goes about his day and everything like that. And we see like his little bunker where he stays. It just like hints of his past. Like, he has a picture with a woman. We don't know who this woman is. They don't say if it's like a girlfriend. They don't say if it's like a sister or anything like that. He also has hair in the picture. And it, like I said, the whole relationship between him and Samson is just sweet. at the same time because it is like he just wants to help people, and you get the vibe that that's very rare in this world. This in the greater UK that's ravaged by the infected and whatnot. It's cut off from the rest of the world. Unfortunately, at the same time, you got to deal with Spike and the Jimmys, and they're like the total opposite. Jimmy, as we know from the last movie, the last thing he ever experienced where like the outbreak happened was him like hunkered down with his like family. They all get massacred while he's watching the Teletubbies, and goes to deal with his father, who's like a works at the church. I forget his official position. He ends up giving him a cross, and but the way he gets it to him is upside down, which I know in Christian theology that's not like that sounds like like the devil or something like that. So he just interprets it all wrong, and we see now 20 years later he's pretty much become like a Satanist, and he has his own little cult, and it goes a little unstated, but his little he calls them the fingers. They were all born after the outbreak. So they don't or yeah, they're all born after outbreaks. So they had no they don't know what the world was like before all of this. So that way he's easily able to manipulate them because they don't know him better. So he just tells them all these tall tales about how he receives commands from old Nick, aka Satan, and like he tells him like old Nick's telling him to do like just be depraved and debaucherous and everything else. Like we don't really get a full example of like what they really do like in their day to day. I mean, there is a scenes where you can see in the trailer they kind of hijack a house and just hold a household captive, and that does lead to a very intense scene in the barn that I won't go in detail here, but if you're squeamish, I can see why. Luckily, they do it kind of tastefully, but it definitely isn't for the faint of heart. Because they said you can kind of right away the infected for being infected. They don't know any better. In a little previous example, like they give a brief glimpse of what Samson sees as the infected, and it's like these things are not these things are in pain also. But when you see humans just being like the worst, it's like no, you know exactly what you're doing, and you know this isn't right, and especially Jimmy, the head Jimmy, and he just takes advantage of that. Meanwhile, Spike, he was the main. I guess he technically is the main character of this one also, but he's more like supporting protagonist more than anything. He doesn't have that many lines, and because he's just kind of going off for the ride. He's like, hey, like I basically got forced into this little cult, and I'm trying to find a way out as much as I can, but the opportunity's not coming, so I'm just trying to like stay alive as much as I can, not rock the boat. But everybody kind of grasps like he's not cut out for this. Like the way he joins isn't ideal either because I'm not gonna give away what he has to do to join them, but it is based on like fight or die, and he happens to get lucky, and so like I think they all kind of the other James kind of grasp like okay, like we can't do anything because he did technically work his way into this, but we know he's a weak link, and like let's keep an eye on him, including like Jimmy. Like I said, Jack O'Connell, I know a lot of people discuss like this. He's been around forever. Discovered him last year with Sinners, and he had that little brief cameo at the end of 28 years later. But this one, he really gets to show like what he's about and the character Jimmy and everything like that. Like I said, he's a cult leader. He's just taking advantage of like the youth, and he's just kind of like going along as much as he can. You can clearly tell by halfway through the movie that he's full of it, and he may be aware that he's full of it, but also may not also, but he's definitely, you can tell he knows he's like making up as he goes. And I'm just only saying things stuff from the trailer as we see like he does end up confronting Kelson in his bone temple, the bone temple that Kelson made as a tribute to all the deceased from the virus and everything like that. And this is probably the best scene in the movie between those two, because it really gets to like how this world's really affected people. Because like I said, Kelson is an older man. Rick Fonz is like I think 60s, so like he was obviously an adult when the outbreak happened. So he really got to experience like the world before it was. Jimmy, he did not get to experience that. So he was only 8 when the outbreak happened. So he has a grasp, but he doesn't fully understand like what the world really was. And you also learn like, hey, Kelson's, a man of science. He's an atheist. He doesn't really believe in God and everything like that. While Jimmy on the other hand does, at least he claims, I do get the feeling he's not really lying, that he does believe in like and higher power. But he happens to follow, Satan and everything like that. He thinks this is like what Satan's brought to the world, because the way they interpret it, Kelson, as we know from the previous 28 movies, this was created in a lab. This virus was created in a lab, but Jimmy doesn't know that. He thinks it's created by this is God's, or Satan's wrath or God's wrath or anything like that, and this is how we just have to deal with things. I mean, Kelson doesn't know either that was created in a lab, but I mean, so you can kind of tell. So that it kind of deals with that, and like the how these two but heads and everything. Like Sir Ray Fiennes, he's a great actor. I think that's obvious. Jack O'Connell, I think this has been a good year for him. I mean, like I said, I know he's been around forever. I remember him from, I believe it's called Eden Lake in like the late 2000s. Also like in a cult, like a weird cultist movie. And Alfie Williams, he does the best he can with the limited, like I say, he's in the whole movie, but he has a very like limited role in this movie. Some actors that surprised me was no, they're not really on the poster thing, is Aaron Kellerman as Jemima or something like that. All the Jimmys are named like Jimmy, except for the two women who are called Jemima, and I think it's like Jimmy something. But yeah, Erin Kellerman, I think she was in the Falcon and Winter Soldier as the Flag Smasher. She was also in a Solo Star Wars story. She actually really has a bigger role than like Spike, and she really is like, I don't want to say she's the hardest movie, but you really do get the vibe. I'm like, all right, we know it's like Spike from the previous one. He was isolated on that little small island, so he didn't really get to experience any of this. While she's been wandering. We don't know how long she's been along with Jimmy, but you can also tell like she kind of doesn't want to be there either. She doesn't really take like glory in like the stuff she has to do to survive and everything like that, or even like extra stuff. And so like there's that aspect of the Jimmy storyline that really goes explore, especially between those her and Spike, and also with Kelson, his story with Samson. I forget the actor's name, but he also, like say Samson, he's infected, so he doesn't really talk or anything like that. But he really does do a lot with his body acting. Like he has to convey a lot in his role, and like I said, there's more goes on as I will get into like in the spoiler section in a second. But he really does a great job also, and you do like. I mean, I think I always feel bad for him in general, but once you realize like this, he's coming into Kelson to go get his fix. It's like, man, this is just a sad world. So yeah, I mean, honestly, this isn't like a grand movie either. There's probably like three sets maybe. It's all like the rest is kind of outdoors, but it's also a beautiful movie. I appreciate Nia DaCosta. Like, there's visual similarities between this and the last one, but she's doing her own thing, which I appreciate. It's like, all right, I get it's like a franchise, and I said they were filmed simultaneously, but she's doing her own thing. There's different camera work. She's not shooting like on iPhone besides like certain shots like Danny Boyle did. There's no like intercuts to World War One like the boot sequence in the previous one or anything like that. So like I said, I appreciate that, and I know I think this is a good bounce back from the Marvels, her last big studio movie. I know she has a movie that came out on Prime. I haven't seen it yet, but Tessa Thompson. I'm surprised Tessa Thompson making a cameo on this, to be honest. But yeah, other than that, I think it was a really, really good movie. Really, actually, I would say honestly, this is probably my favorite in the franchise. I'm not the biggest fan of the 28 later movies. I mean, I appreciate them. My sister, she was really in the first one. She got me into it, but then like I said, the 28 weeks later, I thought it was like no pun intended. I thought it was a weak movie. Like had a strong opening, and then the previous one, like I said, I liked it when I walked out of it, but it did grow on me as it went along. And this one, I really came out this one enjoying this more. If you're coming in thinking this is gonna be like a zombie movie, they do use the word zombie or infected. It's like a zombie movie. You're kind of be disappointed because there's probably like maybe like 3 sequences deal with like the infected, and they're all pretty like short and sweet for the most part. It's like other than one, you pretty much seen like what you've seen it done before, so it's nothing like grandiose or special. But other than one, like there's one that comes in a bit later. It's like okay, that kind of came out of nowhere. But yeah, I really enjoy this movie, and it's like I think it's my favorite in the franchise. But now I will get into spoilers, so I'll give you like a 5 second warning. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And yes, Cillian Murphy is in the movie as Jim. He does reprise his role as Jim from 28 Days Later. He comes in like he kind of like does like the Jimmy role from the ironic both named Jim. Jimmy role from the previous movie. He comes in like the very last scene. We do see that he has a daughter. At least she calls him dad. And she has she's black, so it's kind of like, all right, is this Selena, Naomi Harris's character's daughter? Him and him, did they have a daughter or something like that? And you see that he's educating her and everything like as best he can in this world. And we see that like their alarm system or something. They hear the screams of Spike and um the woman Jimmy play Erin Kellerman. She says her real name like briefly. I couldn't catch it. We see them running from like a bunch of affected, and then Jim's daughter, Cillian Murphy's character is like, "Hey, Dad, we're gonna help him." And he's like, "Of course we are." And that's how the movie ends. We also see that he has a gun, which is 20 years later. Like the previous movie kind of established, like the world's cut. The UK is cut off from the rest of the world. So how does he like? You would assume like I assume he's not going to like bullets like crazy, but still it's like, wow, you still have a gun after like 28 years later. Like how that happen? So it is an interesting tease for the next one. I mean, I hope there's a next one. I heard this one isn't doing great, but I mean, like, this has always been like a kind of a niche franchise, also. But yeah, it was an interesting tease for the next one. If there is a next one, like I said, fingers crossed for there is. But going back to like the main plot, the whole Samson thing, like we find out that Kelson has I don't want to say like a full on cure or anything like that for the infected, but we do see like Kelson does work out a like at least like a stabilizer or something for Samson. And it is like once that starts happening, like seeing like Samson's kind of getting like some normality. Like say he speaks a few times, which was kind of like shocking. I was genuinely surprised he's actually just start speaking, and that it's like okay, this is Kelson's gift to the world. We do see him taking notes and everything like that, and so and marking down what he's been doing. And when I speak about the like the infected scene, there's a really interesting scene where Samson after he's being like like I said, I'm just gonna say cured just for like a shorthand. After he's been cured, that he does get attacked by the other infected because they realize he's not really like them anymore, and they also try to reinfect him. So it doesn't work. We do see it doesn't work, but we see like a full like hand to hand fight with these things with him being the alpha, so he's huge, and that was like I was like, wow, this is a really like interesting scene because we never seen this before, and like an unaffected like this, especially like an alpha against like a pack of like quote unquote normal infected. Um, the Jimmy stuff, like I said, the whole Jimmy stuff with Kelson that kind of coincides like the main Jimmy woman. She kind of figured she's like I said, she doesn't really buy into Jimmy's like nonsense. Like she could tell it's kind of BS, but she kind of has like no choice. But when she sees Kelson in the Bone Temple, he's covered in iodine, so he looks red. She's like, "Oh my God, this is like maybe Jimmy was right. This is Saint Nick and everything." And so Jimmy, like I said, when Jimmy and Kelson do finally talk, Jimmy's like, "Hey, I enjoyed talking to you, but you need to go along with this, or I'm gonna kill you because like." He's like, I know I'm full of it, but they don't know that, and I need them like to go along with it also. So I need you to like reaffirm me, and like establish me as like their leader, and I'll leave you alone. I won't kill you, but if you don't, like say, I will come back and harm you or something like that. So Kelson's like, okay, and this is probably the best scene in the movie where Kelson basically poses as Satan. So he does this whole like dance routine because he has like a little generator where he plays music on every night. So he blasted his little system playing Iron Maiden. I think it's called. I don't know. I'm not an Iron Maiden fan. I think it's called the Number of the Beast. I think that's the name of the song. And this is probably the best in the movie. Ralph Fiennes, he just goes for it. He's like, he kind of looks like Voldemort, honestly, the way he's like, so he's bald and he's like crawling and stuff like that. And it's pretty much turns like a little rock concert. And he's like blowing drugs in their faces and everything like that. And like I said, I don't want to give too much away other than that, but it does leave a climax where it is sad. It's sad, but also beautiful at the same time. It's like, yes, this world sucks, but there's hope where you can find it, and we need to savor that where we can. And this just the climax with Kelson, Jimmy, and the other Jimmys and everything like that, and even Samson. I think it was a great finale to this movie. Like I said, if the series had end right there, I'd probably be happy. But we do get that little tease at the end, and and other than that, like I said, I think this is I think it's the best one. Probably my personal favorite in the franchise. Like so I know people are like, oh, you got like the first one the best. I'm like, nah, I don't have to do anything. I don't want to. But yeah. So honestly, if I give like a this is best they how I rank this film, I would definitely rank this as a I'm gonna buy the physical media. I might wait to see like if there's gonna be a third one because I'll just buy like the 28 years trilogy 4K whatever. So that's how I'm like that's like my highest recommendation for this movie. So if you can go check it out, I hope you do. If not, like I'm not gonna judge him for not going to the movies, but check it out when you can, support it as much as you can because I would like to see this franchise. I would like to see that ending continued. Other than that, thanks for listening.